two or more fam, friends out there. We're so glad you decided to join us for another episode of Industry Talk. Man, I have a good friend, a good brother of mine, and a special guest on today's session. Just a little bit about industry talks. It's really community talks, people talks, because we're really diving in to the life beyond the community. Guys within the network of two or more, and there's so many different guys who have different diverse backgrounds. And we thought, what better way to be a resource to you and also be an addition to your tools and resources in your toolbox to grow professionally, grow spiritually, grow financially, grow holistically, even outside of our live sessions. Man, I'm so honored, man. We have Yves Batoba in the building, y'all. Can y'all give it up for Yves, my boy Yves?
What's going on? Happy to be on, man. Appreciate you having me for sure. I love what Two or More is doing with these industry talks.
Man, we're honored, bro. I'm honored for sure. Man, I know we go back almost 10 years next year, almost 10 years. And
yeah.
it's crazy how fast time has gone. And, tonight is all about managing transitions, managing life's transitions. Before we get into it, I'll let you just kind of introduce yourself and kind of tell us a little bit about your background and your experiences leading up into this point of where you're at, man.
Originally from the Democratic Republic of Congo. I was born there, and we had to flee because of a civil war that broke out, my family and I. So, 6 kids, 2 parents, all 8 of us went to South Africa, where we stayed in post-apartheid South Africa. Nelson Mandela is the president. You have, a lot of tension still in the air. That was apartheid. So, the white people didn't like us because we were black. And the black people didn't like us because we were in South Africa. We were Congolese. So after, being there and not having any friends at school and my little brother getting death threats and my mom getting beat and our house getting broken into and all types of stuff happening because the people didn't want us to live there, we finally decided as a family, hey, let's leave. Let's move to the United States, where we had a little bit of extended family that lived here. So came over here, stayed in Charlotte, North Carolina, and then moved to Texas, the great state of Texas, or the great country of Texas, depending on who you ask.
Right.
The Republic of Texas, man. So grew up over here, Irving, Texas, to Keller, Texas. Fell in love with the sport of football. We weren't really a sports family. All of our focus was on education, but ended up falling in love with football whenever I was in the 7th grade. Didn't really know what the heck I was doing, but my coach said, hey, grab this ball and go that way. So I said, hey. So, I played running back, slot receiver, and safety in middle school.
Okay. Well, you had a little speed on you.
Bro, I remember it was 8th grade. There was a game where I scored like 5 touchdowns.
Ooh, okay.
I got a letter. Yeah, I got a letter from the high school head coach saying, hey, saw that you had a good game. Can't wait till you're up here with us next year. To see what you're able to do. So, you get a letter from the head coach of the high school.
Talent. Right.
Yeah, you feel like you the man. I'm like, all right, man. So go over to high school. They, they had me playing receiver and corner, and then eventually just strictly cornerback. That allowed me to I went to Oklahoma State, walked on actually on the football team, went there on an academic scholarship, walked on the football team, and then was eventually able to earn a full football scholarship. While I was there. So the main reason I chose Oklahoma State was because they were one of only 2 programs at the time that had a sports media program. One of only 2 universities at the time that had a sports media program. Funny enough, after 1 year, I ended up switching majors. So I wasn't even in sports media anymore. I switched over to sports management, business administration, and then I added marketing towards the end. So triple majored at Oklahoma State. Got very, very involved in college athletics. While I was there, I was the president of what's called the Student Athlete Advisory Committee, which is kind of the voice of the student athlete on campus. But then I was the chair of the Big 12 Conference's Student Athlete Advisory Committee. And then eventually at the national level, at the NCAA, I was serving on 2 different committees. So there was the National Student Athlete Advisory Committee, as well as the Minorities, Opportunities, and Interest Committee that was formed at the time. So it was cool. It was during the time whenever legislative autonomy was a conversation within collegiate athletics. I was really, really interested in the governance. It was cool that I got to represent the entire conference, and I got to be the voice of the student athletes, right? 32 different student athletes were going up there. That afforded me the chance to go all over the place, man. And, and meet some really great and interesting individuals in the sports industry.
Man, that's a lot of exposure, man. And that's a journey too. I mean, literally from coming from the Democratic Republic of Congo to the US to moving all these places to finally getting kind of settled in, in middle school to high school, and then on your way to Oklahoma State and then being so involved on campus, man, that's amazing. I know in your time post college, you did some work with college students and then moved to profession. But talk a little bit about what that transition was like, what you enjoyed about in college, right? Working for a university, and then how that translated over into working for a professional NFL organization.
Yeah, the biggest part about my experience in college was I got to see a lot of how student athletes weren't really getting prepared for that transition for themselves, right? Whether it's athlete identity or if it's financial literacy or just, community work and whatnot. So I decided, that's what I want to do. I want to help these student athletes fully prepare themselves, especially when it comes to what their careers are going to look like whenever football is no longer a part of their identity. And I was doing that at Oklahoma State as a student athlete. Whenever I graduated, I was still doing that at some capacity within the Big 12 conference. They would fly me to different conferences and things like that. And I got to speak as a panelist. I got to speak as a keynote, so it was really awesome to get that exposure. But one day I got a call from the University of Notre Dame, the senior associate athletic director, who was Mike Harity at the time. Now he's deputy at West Point. But he called me up and he said, hey, I talked to a friend of mine, Ed Stewart, who, one of the assistant commissioners for the Big 12 and one of my mentors. And he said, I should reach out to you because you'd be great for this role that we have. So, long story short, he calls me on a Sunday. We have a phone conversation. By next Friday, 4 days later, he was offering me the job. So, packed up all my stuff. I didn't know where the heck South Bend, Indiana was.
Right.
I didn't even know where Notre Dame was, man. But yeah, I looked on the map. I was like, boom, seems cool. But honestly, man, they were doing it at such a high level when it came to the area of leadership development, community outreach, as well as career preparation for all 750 student athletes at Notre Dame.
Man.
And it was incredible. Loved my experience over there. And that opportunity actually led me to working with the Miami Dolphins because Mike had a relationship with a gentleman named Caleb Thornhill down at the Dolphins, who was a director of player engagement. And Caleb was looking to make a hire. And it was Mike who connected me to Caleb. And he said, hey, you ought to take a look at this guy. I was working out on a Saturday one day. He shot me a text and he said, hey, are you going to the men's tennis game today? I wasn't planning on going, but I said, it's a senior associate AD text. And I'm like, yeah,
right.
I'll be there.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to be there. I'm there.
He said, okay, cool. I want to talk to you about an opportunity in the NFL. I'm looking at my phone. I'm like, okay, all right, see what it's about. So whenever we get there, we're watching the game, talking about some of the players, yada, yada, yada. And then he tells me about the opportunity. He tells me about it. I go and I get connected with Caleb. And probably 3 to 4 months later, I'm in East Lansing, Michigan, helping Caleb out with his nonprofit. And on that day, he told me that he was going to hire me to go back to Miami with him and work for the Dolphins. And it was my birthday. It was a nice little birthday present.
Hey, right. Happy birthday to you. That is pretty memorable, bro. And I love how, how relationships played a factor, that you were clearly credible in one space and one time frame in your life and in your process. And then that literally made the deposit for you to cash in, relationally, at least later in another stage and accept that opportunity, bro. That's amazing. I think that's huge.
Somebody told me once, man, you're in the people business or you're out of business. Plain and simple.
Wow. That's true.
No matter what industry you work in, you're in the people business or you're out of business. It all comes down to those relationships, man.
And speaking of being in like the people business, I mean, what would you say you enjoyed the most about your role, a part of the Miami Dolphins, being in player engagement?
Yeah, so being in player engagement for 5 years, the biggest thing was, you're empowering these guys, engage, educate, and empower these guys to reach their full potential both on and off the field. And in that role, you really got to be a holistic part of these guys' lives, right? Whether that's, their families transition, financial literacy, moving into a new city, figuring out how taxes work, right? Even if it had to do with mental health, if it had to do with them just getting acclimated to life in the NFL, dealing with stress, hitting the rookie wall, what does that look like? So whether it was a rookie who's 21 years old and figuring out how to use money for the first time, budgeting,
wow,
or if it was a guy who's already made $90 million in his career and he's figuring out how to, form his LLC and, just wealth management and where to invest and things like that, right? Cover the entire scope of it all, as well as with their significant others and their wives and everything. So I loved the fact that you got to make an impact on these guys' lives. You know, I had a player once who shot me a message. It was a picture of a refrigerator. And he said, "Hey, look closely in this fridge. You'll see a budget sheet. Sheets that you helped me make. I gave this to my mom to help them, you know, figure out how to budget best because they were mismanaging their money." And he said, "If it wasn't for you, this wouldn't be possible, man." So things like that, you know. So, you know, knowing that you're playing a
Priceless.
role in guys' lives, to me, that's the real paycheck.
Man, that is priceless. I mean,
Exactly, man.
to make a true impact and help somebody change the future of somebody else's life, man, that's what it's all about, bro. For men, I would say, you know, we're taught growing up that, you know, everything that is counting on us is based on our job title, based off our tangibles, our possessions, our awards, if you will, whatever we can acclaim to you know
Yeah.
to show. You know, this is about managing life transitions, right? Share a little bit about the transition you and your wife have experienced, you know,
Yeah.
probably in the last 2 months or so. And what are you kind of learning about yourself during this transition?
Man, I'll tell you what, we so just recently, right? Whenever the coronavirus pandemic hit, everything was work from home. So we're not in the building, in the training facility. We're just, you know, in our little apartment in downtown Fort Lauderdale, my wife and I. And then one day I get a phone call, and the phone call basically says, "Hey, you know, unfortunately, you know, your last day with the Dolphins is going to be on this day." And yeah, that's it. So I remember I'm on a phone call, and he's saying all this stuff, and the whole time I'm kind of hopeful. You know, I'm smiling inside. I remember my wife comes out of the room, and I give her the news, and she didn't even believe me because I was smiling. You know, she looking at me like, "I don't believe you. I don't think
Right.
you I let go because
She's
why you
like,
smiling?"
she's like, am I being a punk?
Yeah,
Like, where Ashton at? Like, what's going on?
exactly. And then a week later, she gets furloughed from her job.
Mm.
So we're over here. Both of us are without work. We're living in downtown Fort Lauderdale. And
That ain't cheap,
the
brother.
reason,
I'm just
yeah, man. But yo, the reason why I was so excited though was I was like, yo, what an opportunity for us
mm-hmm.
to really get to practice what we preach. I'm of the belief that a faith that has never been tested really can't be trusted. Right. So my faith has been
Wow.
tested multiple times, but in this chance, it was like, all right, God, we're both out of work. We don't know what we're gonna do. It's
Right.
time for you to shine. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Do your thing. Do
So,
your thing, Pop.
exactly. Exactly.
We
So
ain't
so
got it.
she hears from God. She hears from God
Mm-hmm.
in a prayer, and God tells her that, hey, you guys are going to have to pack up all your stuff and move to Texas. I'm talking to her like, are you sure? Like, you sure that was
Did
God?
you? Right. Who
I
texted
like the
you?
son over here. Yeah, so I'm like, okay, you know, let's pray about it. A couple of days later, I hear the same thing. Hey, pack up all your stuff and move to Fort Lauderdale. I talk to my wife. I'm like, hey, no, you know what? You're right. You know, usually whenever your wife, you know, she hears something, it's for the good, right? And one thing I've learned about
Right.
change too is change more often than not leads to something good. So that was on a Sunday that I heard we made the decision. Monday we started packing up, broke our lease, packed up her car and shipped it, and we drove my car from South Florida all the way there. So we started doing that on Monday. By Thursday we were driving out of there. So again, it was just one of those things where we're just trusting God blindly. I would say, man, the reason why, you know, we were never really in full on panic mode was really because of our foundation, right? I think it's so easy for, especially as men, for us to find our identity in the things that we do, right? And, you know, it's great that you can get some acclaim in your work, especially in my position where I was working in the NFL, where, you know, it can be a glamour position, but ultimately what you end up finding is that, yo, it's what you do, but it's not who you are. And our foundation was never in our titles. It wasn't in our jobs. Our foundation truly was built on Christ. And it's good, you know, a lot of times it's good to have, you know, good things that you build your life on, right? But good things aren't necessarily God things, right? So we would
Right.
have, hey, we have these good principles. We have these good core values. We feel like we have a strong marriage. That's all fine and dandy. But our foundation was built on Christ. And I think that's why whenever everything around us felt like it was starting to crumble, we were able to say, "Oh, we good. You know, we know we know what we stand on."
Right.
So the transition for us, man, it was, you know, although it's been challenging, at the same time, we know that, you know, just where our help comes from, where our faith comes
Exactly.
from. Right.
Right.
Right now, my wife and I, we're doing scripture memorization, and Isaiah 40:31 is what we've been focusing on right now. And it says, "Those who trust in the Lord will find new strength. that will
Mm.
soar high on wings like eagle, that will run and not grow weary, that will walk and not faint. And I love that it says we'll find new strength, right? Because it doesn't say we'll renew their strength, because I don't want the strength that I had in the past.
Come on,
Right
right,
now, I
right.
got the strength that's like, yo, I didn't even know that I could be this innovative. That now I'm still focused on sports, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I was able to transition into a sports agency, right? So now I'm working with a sports agency, Neo Star Football. But at the same time, I got my hand in real estate now that I've been
Okay.
dabbling in, right? I got my hand in some forms of ministry now. These things that I've been wanting to explore for a while, but I felt like I had all these excuses because, my job demanded so much of me, which,
Mm.
I get it. And my job now demands a lot of me, but I have new strength. Right. And I think that's where the power of it comes from. It's been a transition for sure. And it's been a challenging one. It's been difficult, but it's solely been because of God that we've been able to, make it as smooth as we possibly can up to this point.
Man, that is amazing. Woo, new strength. I feel like running through a wall now. I feel
Hey,
like,
man,
let's
I don't need the
go.
strength that I had before. I know I get worn out. I get tired. I get stressed out, but I don't need the strength I had before. And a lot of
Right,
times, man,
right.
people
Mm-hmm.
will ask God, like, yo, I have all this stress. I need God to take it away. God, can you remove my stress? But I just learned to say, hey, instead of asking God to remove my stress, can he increase my capacity instead? So I can handle everything that you
Right,
have for me, right?
right,
Like you can't complain about a full plate if you ask God, hey, put more on my plate, right?
right. What you
So I
complaining
just
about?
say,
That's
give
good.
me a bigger plate. That's
Right.
all I need,
Let's
right? Increase
go.
the capacity. That's it.
That is amazing that you said about we get bogged down with so much stress because I mean you hear these things like all stress isn't bad stress and I get all that, but what would you say people should be aware of when handling the pressure and the stress of any life or career transition, because there will be stress and there will be pressure, but you said something about the capacity aspect. What would you say to a person who is in a life transition or career
Yeah.
transition, and how to manage that pressure?
Yeah, I mean, I remember whenever I was transitioning just from playing football, and I haven't played football since I was 12 years old, and then career comes to an end. That's a tough transition for any athlete, right? And even the longer that you play, the harder the transition is. So for a lot of these NFL guys that go through what I call identity foreclosure, right? The identity
Mm,
comes to a foreclosure, and now they lose personal growth. They feel like they're losing human connection. They feel like they're losing contribution to society all at once. And I remember the prayer that I prayed. This was in 2013. I just said, hey, God, can you direct what my career is going to be, right? I'm going to
mm.
do what I can do, but I'm going to fully trust you to do what I can't do. And what that did is it took the pressure off of me. This is back in summer 2013. And I prayed that prayer. And honestly, whenever you can relieve that burden, like just take that stress and that pressure off
Mm-hmm.
of yourself, the one thing that you realize is control what you can control, right? Hey,
Wow.
I'm going to work as hard as I can, and I'm going to do everything that I can do. But there's a whole bunch of things that I can't do, and I'm going to trust God to do all of that. It
Mm,
just took the pressure off my shoulder, like it took the load off of my shoulders, and I feel like, okay, I know that I got somebody else that's fighting for me, right? The
right.
master of the universe is fighting for me. I don't have to feel like I have to do everything. And even in this transition that we're going through right now, I had to remind myself of that. Yo, just control what you can control. Trust God to handle the rest of it.
It sounds to me, in order to control what you can control, you have to know what is important and what your priorities are that you're going to manage. It sounds like you have to have a good idea of what you're focusing on, because you
Yeah.
can have so much going on around you that everything's competing for your attention. And you got this coming up on the news, you got this going up on social media, you got this concern with the spouse, you got this maybe negative mindset trying to impede on your thoughts. Like you have so many things going on. But I realize if we're going to control what we can control or manage what we can control, you have to align the priorities. So
No
tell me a little
question.
bit about how routine changed for you.
Yeah.
And as far as post-pandemic, what are some things you're doing now that you enjoy that you weren't doing before?
Stretcher got stripped from me, right? Like stretcher just got removed. So I'm over here like, yo, what does my day-to-day look like? I felt like routine became even more prominent. It became more important than it was before.
Mm,
So, my wife and I, we got up in the morning and we do our reading plans together, right? We do our reading plan together, and then we pray together, and then we go and we hit our workout together, right? Um, and then after that, we have to find some time to just, hey, let's work. Let's do work related stuff. Let's block out some hours to just focus on work, right? Routine, especially that morning routine, to me, it's so sacred, right? I don't want to compromise my mornings for anything.
Mm-hmm.
But, the way that I talk about it, I always talk about my 5 Ps, right? I call it my 5 Ps to the promised land. And my 5 Ps are prayer, physical, personal, professional, and philanthropic, right? Those are my 5 Ps. And when I talk about prayer, I'm talking about just the reading plans. I'm talking about my worship music. I'm talking about my prayer life, right? If I don't have those things in place, the rest of it gets jacked up because that's my foundation. My faith is who I am, right? And then after that, I go to the physical side. What am I eating? How am I training, right? Because, that affects me. Right, completely. Whenever you're playing sports, you have to eat 6,000, 7,000 calories a day. But if you're still doing that after you transition, you're gonna come out feeling like a freaking slob.
Man, all that.
Keep doing that. Yeah, I gotta manage my sweets. I gotta manage how much carbs I intake, all of it. And then beyond that, so I got the prayer, I got the physical right now, I got the personal stuff, right? So that's my marriage, prioritizing, hey, here's time with just my wife. What are we doing? Are we prioritizing date night? Are we prioritizing just pillow talk? That's
Right,
important.
right. Those are so important.
No, for sure, man. And even beyond that, looking at personality assessments, right? If that's the Enneagram or if that's the DISC assessment, figuring out exactly who you are so that you can understand yourself, so that you can understand each other and how you both relate to one another, right? I took the DISC assessment twice. I've taken the Enneagram. I'm an Enneagram 3, wing 2. And on the DISC assessment, I'm a high I and S, right? I'm like a mixture between a high and S. So now I know things about myself. Like I really value collaboration, teamwork, right? I could be an influencer, but also at an unhealthy level, I can suck the energy dry out of a room if I'm not at a healthy level. I got to know these things about myself. And once I get those 3 Ps established, right? Prayer, physical, and personal, now I know I can show up professionally the way that I know how to show up. Because the truth of the matter is you bring yourself to work. Like you bring all of yourself to work.
Yeah.
And if you're feeling crummy or if you're not at a healthy level, that spills over into how you're doing your work. So, my professional part, that's that task list, that to-do list. And as long as I'm taking care of business, then I can get to the final P. That's the philanthropic side. And the philanthropic side, that's what I care about. That's the random acts of kindness. That's helping other people out in their foundations. That's, the public service, all that stuff that has to do, especially right now in an election year and with everything that's going on around the country with social justice. Like I want to be able to be involved in that, but that only happens if I'm able to take care of the 4 Ps that leads to that 5th P of philanthropy.
That is such a great breakdown of just how to prioritize your life. So what is one thing you would say that you're doing now? Maybe you have time for, maybe you always wanted to, or maybe it just came up. But what's something you're doing now that you weren't doing before the transition?
Passion projects, right? My mind has always been interested in so many different things, right? And now I feel like because of the time that's available, I'm able to dive into doing a podcast, for example, right? I've been thinking about this for years, but now I'm just like, I got time. I can start doing it. Spending more intentional time with my wife, even, connecting with her at a different level. But, the passion projects have been it, from the podcast to the real estate investing, being able to close on a couple of deals already. All it does is it sends all these hits of dopamine to the brain that gives you confidence that, you can do more. So, between those few things, honestly, man, the more that you can actually, take your ideas and your passion projects and actually go and execute on them, it does create I don't know if it's just a different sense of happiness or what, but it just, it gives you more confidence for sure. And I think that confidence can take you a long way. Right. But definitely, man, being able to explore those passion projects, I would say has been, it's been a game changer in my life. And because honestly, man, what it makes you say is, I can do this. So, that's the biggest thing, man. It just gives you that type of confidence that you didn't know you had before.
And once again, it comes back to having those 5 Ps in place, because as men, we're such visionaries. We have ideas. We get dreams. There's movies where the girl can choose the guy that either is seems to be plain, but he's got everything in line and he's accomplished things. And you got the guy who has all these dreams and he, can I hold something? No, I'm going to start this business. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Sell these. I got these watches. I got these, the parallel between someone getting things done and someone getting stuck at start.
It creates a new discipline. Like motivation is cool. Motivation gets things started. Discipline is what gets things done. So whenever you can actually stop back and say okay, here are the things that I need to do in order to have this thing come to fruition. and you're able to take something from A to Z and say, okay, it's because of the discipline that I had that this thing was actually able to come to life. That only develops you as a person as well.
Man, before we wrap up, touch on like discipline recovery, because right now in the pandemic you had people going into work, you had people had a routine, and the routine was just a wash. It got just thrashed, and a lot of guys, a lot of men and women out there are trying to regain recovery for that discipline. So what would you recommend, what would you do to start recovering those disciplines that maybe you grow and lax, maybe someone gained a little weight, how do you recover that discipline?
Accountability. I think accountability is the biggest thing. You better tell some people.
Right. Help.
Hey, straight up. I got my little brother I talk to. I got you that I talk to. I got my boy Elliot that I talk to. Right. I got my boys Christian and my man Justin that I talk to. I know that I have to have these people that hold me accountable, because honestly, I can't trust myself too much. Some days I wake up and I just, this bed feels really good.
Right.
And I have to put small disciplines in place that say, like, okay, let me actually take my phone and put it away from my bed. That way, whenever I hear it go off in the morning, I need to actually get out of bed to turn this thing off.
Wow.
Right? So, just different things like that, putting systems in place, right? One of our, former head coaches, who's the head coach of the New York Jets now, Coach Adam Gase, he once said something to me back in 2016 that stuck with me forever. He said, you don't rise to the occasion, you perform to the level of your preparation, right?
Hold up.
Yeah.
Rewind.
So look,
say it again.
Nobody rises to the occasion. What they do is they perform to the level of their preparation. So whenever the moment is here, you can't just say, all right, time to step up. No, you're only going to perform to what your disciplines have been, to what systems you have created in your life, and how you've been practicing up to this point. So, the reason why that's made such a huge difference in my life is I had to say, okay, what systems am I actually putting in place right now, to where these are really, really small habits. But the thing about atomic habits is whenever they meet the right opportunity, boom, that's when you see how they blow up. And now you're able to really step up to the challenge.
Wow. It sounds like to me that regardless of transition and changes, you have to be ever prepared. Like, doesn't matter. Like, imagine walking down a hallway and all these doors were locked. The prerequisite to walking up on a door being unlocked and open is you have to continue to walk. Imagine if you just stop and stand and the door only has, let's say, a 2-second window. So you're walking and you just stop. And all of a sudden the door that was going to open, if you kept walking, open, but you only have 2 seconds, you're going to miss that door. So it's like, things may change, scenery may change, but continue to ever prepare. I was talking to one of my good big bros. We were at lunch one day. He goes, I just believe that if you simply prepare for the opportunity instead of looking for the opportunity, when it shows up, you'll be able to take it. Like, just prepare as if opportunities are going to always arise, and that if you're always prepared, you'll always be ready. So if you kind of like that old adage, Andy Mineo, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. Already. So it's just that same mindset of always prepare, prepare for things to go wrong, prepare for things to actually go right. I think sometimes when we have an idea and it goes right, we don't know what to do to recover from success. Like, that's a huge thing that people, that your last success sometimes is the greatest barrier to someone moving forward. And
you see it in the NFL all the time. Why is it so hard for a repeat to have for a team to have repeated winning seasons, or for a team to make it to the Super Bowl, whether it's a Super Bowl hangover from the year before, or if it's just, hey, because y'all had a really good season, now this coach gets hired to this other team, and you lose this player in free agency. But you have a very, very few teams who are able to do it repeatedly and all the time because they have such a strong team culture. Not everybody can establish a strong team culture that starts from the top of the organization. So, yeah, man, the troubles that success brings, no, that's definitely a true story, man. I've seen it in sports, but it's so prevalent in our personal lives too.
Man, that's amazing, man. When you talked about culture here in Two or More, we have 3 pillars. It's Christ, community, culture. And then our mission is to grow men in their identity and their relationship with Christ, with Jesus, and to plug them into a thriving community. You can make it what you want it to be. You can connect, you can collab, you can grow, have accountability. And lastly, culture is creating a culture that surpasses society, cultural norms, the influence of the day. So what we do is when we engage men and grow men, we reemerge effective leaders locally. We reemerge a culture of the love of God, transparency, authenticity, vulnerability, and
Yeah.
effectiveness. Like effectiveness, we're losing a lot of effective leaders locally, even nationally. So I feel like once you start in the household, start with the men, and then once you get from the men to the households, it moves to a neighborhood, which is a community, which moves to a city, which moves to a region, which moves to a nation, and ultimately we're impacting the world. So I think that culture aspect is key, because you don't want something temporal. You don't want an event. You don't want something short term and not long term sustainable, but you create a culture. It is going to supersede everything else that you are influenced by. I think it was a live that you were on, the March Management, that's actually on the channel. March Management, talking about stewardship. And Chris goes, I heard this was said once that if you don't take care of the first thing and you go after the second thing, you won't get the first thing or the second thing. Like you're going to sacrifice both because your priorities were out of alignment. And I think about if you invest on the philanthropic first or too much, you're going to miss the personal, the spiritual, everything will be out of whack. And that's one thing, even in my marriage, I've been learning how to balance and manage my time and attention and investing what returns back into me, but also making sure my priorities and the main thing is the main thing, so that the foundation is strong. Because I think if the foundation is strong, no matter what, we're talking about transitions, no matter what changes or transitions in life happen, since my foundation is already strong, I'm always standing on my foundation, not the situation I'm in. If I'm standing on the situation I'm in, being my career, being the relationships I have, being my finances and resources, those things can change overnight. We're all a call away. We're all a day away, a moment away for our life changing forever. So if we're standing on temporal things and those things are shifting, we can have the rug pulled from under us at any time. So I love you talked about that foundation piece, man. That was so huge. And then you said something that was powerful to me. You said, what is what is job security? I mean, this pandemic is teaching all of us that life security is more important than job security, and how you're managing your time. Tell someone, what you're pouring your energy and time into, what has your attention, and what your life is about. And literally you said that statement before anything you walked through. So it's mind boggling to me that it shows that you knew a thing, but now you're walking it out. So what do you think the importance of, even in this series of industry talks, we're getting a lot of resources, guys, we're learning so much. What is the importance of applying what we're learning instead of just knowing it by head knowledge? But what is the importance of really where the rubber meets the road, applying and executing?
Bro, we live in a day and age where you get fed so much content. It's just, hey, here's all the books that I read. Here's some good YouTube videos. Hey, have y'all seen this Instagram clip? You watch this sermon, and it's almost an overload on content. So you get all these people. Hey, I know 400 things. I can tell them to you, and they all sound good, which is great. But are you actually applying it, right? I remember I was listening to Eric Thomas, E.T., talk about how, he was reading a book, and after he got past chapter 1, he said, I can't even move on to chapter 2 yet, because I'm full off of chapter 1. So all this stuff that I just got off of chapter 1, I got to go and I got to apply that right now, right? So all these people could come up to you and they could say, look, I got all these concepts, I got all these philosophies and these ideas. That's all fine and dandy, but a lot of that stuff doesn't get rewarded. Action is what gets rewarded. So when it comes time to actually execute, where are you going to be? I think it does go back to your foundation, but it also goes back to, are you practicing exactly what you preach? And that's why I was so excited even whenever I found out that this transition was going to happen. I'm like, here we go, man. It's time to really be about that action. And, I started a podcast, and in this podcast episode, on episode 1, I was talking about the difference between being a zoo animal and being a wild animal, right? Where the zoo animal, you're in the cage and you're waiting on somebody to come around, and, they're going to feed you, right? And, that's great. And no knock to anybody who works a regular job where you get a paycheck every 2 weeks. Nothing wrong with it. But there's also those people who are the wild animals. And that whenever I wake up in the morning, I got to go and run, because if I don't go run, I won't be able to eat that day. So I got to
Right.
be able to catch that prey. And that's the difference between a zoo animal and a wild animal is, wild animals, they have to go and make it happen. So ultimately, yeah, I mean, ideas are great, but execution is what's really rewarded.
Something I've always said was, people talk about, a lot of people knock the 9 to 5 if they're talking about entrepreneurial pursuits or passions. And I remember my freshman year, I was in a business management course, business administration course. And my professor says, this is fall 2009. He goes, in the coming years, it's going to be the entrepreneur that leads industries. And he was breaking down that the entrepreneur is one who knows how to manage their 9 to 5 as far as what they're doing for an organization, but they'll also formulate something else on the side. We call it the side hustle. We call it passions or monetizing your gift. And I was like, wow. So I had an internal conversation with myself saying, I know I'm concerned about my 9 to 5, but let me make sure that my 5 to 9 is even just as tight or even tighter, because that's when I get to invest into me. That's when I get to plan for my ultimate future. And there's some things that I want to do that, my 9 to 5 might not be able to facilitate. I don't have the capacity to prepare for it. So it's how I'm managing my 5 to 9 that's going to be my make or break for the things I truly want to accomplish, the man I'm truly trying to become. And in order to do all of that, goes back to what you said, foundation. If your foundation ain't right, forget the side hustle, forget the product. You don't lose. Now, people don't lose the 9 to 5. Now, look, don't lose, because that's the foundation, and you got to manage that in order to engage and maintain the 9 to 5. So you need something. You need something to focus on and pour your energy into.
There's only one thing in life that is consistent, right? And that's change.
Yes.
The only thing that's consistent in life is that it's gonna change, right? Going from grade to grade or school to school, identity. Hey, I have a new job, and then you get fired from that job, or you fall in love and then you experience heartbreak, or you get married and now finally understand how this relationship is 2 years in. Oh, now we're bringing a kid into the equation. I got to figure out how to be a parent. Oh, okay, I finally got this parenting thing down. Oh, but now they're a different age, and now I got to be a different kind of parent.
Right.
It's always changing. So the only thing that you can control is gonna have to be, what is this whole thing gonna be built on, right? The foundation, right? That's the key, because the only constant that we have in life is change. So anytime we feel like, hey, we have it all figured out, something's gonna come out of left field. And then we're going to have to go back to the basics, right? Go back to the fundamentals. And those fundamentals can only be found in that foundation.
And speaking of fundamentals, I think something that's very fundamental is whenever you're considering transitioning in a new space or field. As we know, the pandemic has brought about a lot of pivots, a lot of changes. And a lot of men and women have been considering new fields. I've had friends who were entrepreneurs. Now they're back in a certain skill set or field. I have some friends who have been working 9 to 5. Now they're actually pursuing their entrepreneur pursuits. Things even like you shared earlier with like real estate. Yeah. What would you recommend to someone wanting to break into your field and your space? What are some maybe information or tools or resources they should pursue to gain if they're trying to break into the space that you're in?
Yeah, man, I would say in the sports industry specifically, so many people are trying to get in, but that's the hardest part, is actually getting in. One of the biggest things is to get experience early. I would just say, whatever it is, if you want to be in sales and marketing, if you're trying to be in player development, if you're trying to be in coaching, whatever it is, you better make sure that you're getting that experience while you're still in school. You better be reaching out to individuals, making a ton of phone calls. A lot of times it's a little bit of what you know, a little bit of who you know, but it's a whole lot of who knows you. So you got to reach out to people, and also make your intentions clear. Hey, this is what I want to do, right? A lot of people in sports, they're not trying to hire the super fan. Oh, I've been a fan of this team my entire life, and I just want to work here because yada, 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 and I can recite all the stats, and I can tell you the history. No, that's all fine and dandy. But the more that you can specialize it, the more that you can focus in and hone in on a specific role, on a specific skill, the better it's going to be off for you. And the great thing about the world that we live in right now is every single year there's like a new skill or area in sports that people didn't know that they need, right? Who knew that analytics was going to be as big as it is right now in sports?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like 10 years ago, nobody was talking about analytics in sports. Now
Right.
every sports team has analytics. Not just the sports teams, but there are independent companies that have contracts with a whole bunch of sports teams, right? Who knew that social media was going to be so big and all these sports teams were going to hire social media managers, right? Or
Right.
that the digital marketing strategy was going to change the way that it has. Or even you look at betting, right? DraftKings, right? That
Right.
was non-existent, but you're taking a look at that, and that has completely changed. So be sure that, one, keep up with the trends in the industry. Like, keep up with the trends, know exactly what's going on, so that whenever you're asked about it, you have to actually talk about it. You know what the heck you're talking about. But also, the people piece. You know, you got to make yourself known, whether connecting with people on LinkedIn. Or if that's just going up to certain networking events. Right now, everything is kind of
Right. Kind of a virtual space. Yeah.
yeah, virtual space. But shoot, get on as many of those conference calls as you can. You know how many
Right.
webinars are free right now?
Look,
All
I
they
was just
ask is
about
that
to.
you can sign up. Bruh, sign up for them webinars, and then whenever they're doing the Q&A, I need you to be the person that's asking all the questions.
All of them,
Go ahead,
and good
all the
questions
questions.
too. Questions that show you gave some thought, because you mentioned the webinars, the free resources and tools. I wanted to ask, how does technology? I mean, we are in a post-pandemic era now. I mean, literally, I know I made some jokes one time we were talking, and I was like, man, it's like we got married in 2019. Like, we just made the cut. We got
Right.
the weddings we wanted to. People were there, and then a year
That's
later, we're
real.
like, wow, post-pandemic era. How does technology, you feel, impact your field kind of going forward?
Right? Just from the standpoint of, part of technology is going to be the medical advancements because of COVID testing, or people having a season. Of course, as of right now, there are three conferences in college football. The Power Five conferences are going forward, and then two of them aren't, with the Big Ten and the Pac-12. But what actual, precautionary measures are they going to take to make sure that not just the players and the coaches are safe, but are they going to have fans, or are they going to be at a smaller capacity? And if they are, what are they going to do from that standpoint? But I think from the agency side specifically, we have to take a look at how we connect them with these players, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not just the players that are coming out and prospective players, but also players that are current clients that are in the league right now, and how are we providing for them? So, whether that's mail or whether that's a whole bunch of Zoom calls, phone calls, FaceTime is going to be more, more prominent than ever before.
Right.
But, we know that, technology it has to be our best friend right now. It absolutely has to.
It definitely, because I think, if we don't adapt and evolve, we'll get left behind. So that's the consistent thing with change. You can either make the needed adjustments to walk with that current, or you can try to swim against it and get swallowed up and get left behind. So I think that's so important. I know you've had a lot of exposure in different spaces, different environments. What would you say your life mission is? And what mark do you want to leave on in your family, just the people you impact?
This type of question, I think, does require a whole lot of reflection. I
Yeah.
have to look back at my experience all the way from Congo to South Africa, growing up in Texas, falling in love with sports, what I've done within the sports industry, not just as an athlete, but also on the business side of things. And I've given it a whole bunch of thought. I have a notepad that I've written all this stuff down, and I know that I have this big God dream, right? This is my main focus and mission in order to be able to unify the country of Congo.
Mm,
There's a whole bunch of corruption there, but being able to unify through the unifying power of sports. I have
wow.
a I have a vague plan and a rough idea about how I want to go about doing that. And honestly, I feel like that's been revealed even more during this transition of mine. But that's my big God dream, to be able to get all these Congolese athletes who, unfortunately, they leave Congo to go and find success in Canada or in Spain or in France or wherever else, and then Congo is left looking the way that it does. But I would love to be able to unify the country through the power of sport. And, I know that right now I'm not the type of person that can even do that yet. So I believe that you do have to have a goal and a dream that is so big that you have to turn into the type of person who can do that. And, I'm working on that. That's why, my 5 Ps are established, because, those daily habits and those daily practices ultimately are going to lead to that internal transformation. But that's my big dream, man. That's the type of impact that I want to be able to leave on the world, on the globe. So working on that day by
Yeah,
day,
yeah.
one day at a time. But yeah, man, that's definitely the big God dream right there.
There's a scripture that we mentioned in the last live, and it said, if you're faithful over a few things, you'll be a ruler over many. And so what's so interesting in our life, that faithful over a few things, in past seasons, those few things were once goals, prayers, dreams. They were huge things, like huge things. To be able to work for an organization and also create your schedule one day was a hope. It was a huge thing. Now it's just a daily regimen. Being able to make certain decisions, maybe aspirations of getting married or being financially free or starting your own business. Those things once in your past were huge things, but they become the normal things. And I think it's important for, even like you said, you shared with your huge dream, we cannot forget the things we once prayed for that we're experiencing now.
Right.
Like we can't get memory loss. We always have to remember, look, this is what I'm experiencing right now. I'm walking through a prayer. I'm walking through a goal. I'm literally living in step 4 of goals I had 10 years ago. And God literally graced me with the resources, with the relationships, with the opportunities, right, to actually walk through it. So we can forget to pause and just look around us and take in where we're at, take in who's surrounding us, take in what we've had the opportunity to do. And at the end of the day, no, even though I'm looking forward and I have these things going on, everything has been a gift. Everything has simply been a gift. And I'm just going to manage it. And right, like you said earlier, control what I can control. I'm going to manage it. And through every life transition, I'm never going to forget where I've been. And I'm never going to forget where I'm trying to go.
If you're always looking forward to the next moment, then what happens to the moment that you're in right now? And that's why I think gratitude has been so important, in transition. Gratitude allows you to say, yo, I'm so much further than where I used to be. I've seen where God has taken me. But at the same time, man, whenever you're able to connect with other people, right? So somebody asked me once, man, what have you seen has been, just a difference? Like whenever you've been going through this transition, what has kept you sane? And it would be easy for me to say, oh, God is good, or I've been praying and trusting. But honestly, man, connecting with other people and having just a strong community. And whenever I talk to people and they're telling me that, hey, they got laid off and they don't know how they're going to pay their rent, or they lost somebody to the coronavirus, or all these other things, and that you can be there for that individual. And I'm still able to be there for that person, even though I have my own struggles too. That just puts you in a place of gratitude right there, man. And scripture says in Matthew 6:34, enough for tomorrow is its own troubles. Today has enough of its own. So just focus on today, man. And anytime that you have that attitude of gratitude, I think that's the big differentiator in your mood on a daily basis.
Man, it makes all the difference. It makes all the difference, man. Well, speaking of gratitude, man, I'm grateful for this time that we've had. I think it's been amazing. A lot of tools have been shared. I feel like I've learned a lot personally from this conversation and this exchange. So I hope if you guys are watching right now, I hope that you've also learned a lot through this series, this episode of Industry Talks with my man, Yves Batoba, gracing us with his presence and just his life experiences. So, man, make sure you guys catch us on the next Industry Talks. Drop a comment below if you enjoyed this. Share it with someone who you know is maybe transitioning or going through life transitions. And we hope to really catch you guys on the next one. So y'all have a good evening. Be blessed. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
Peace.